"Go to your room, old woman." He said it right to my face, in my own house, in the living room I paid for, standing on the floors I mopped for 30 years. My own son-in-law. And my daughter? She stood right there and said nothing. Not one word. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I picked up a folder from the bottom of my dresser drawer, walked out the front door, and let him laugh. Because the next morning, someone knocked on that door, and everything changed. If this story speaks to you, subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. My name is Margaret Whitmore. I am 69 years old. I have outlived a husband, a recession, 2 flooding seasons on the Charleston Riverside, and 35 years of county government work that nobody ever thanked me for. I say all of that not because I want your sympathy. I say it because I want you to understand exactly what kind of woman was sitting in that green armchair the night my son-in-law decided I had become invisible. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the evening news had just started, and I always watched the evening news. It was one of those small, quiet rituals that kept my days from blurring into one another. A cup of chamomile tea on the side table, a fresh peach pie cooling on the counter. I had made it that afternoon just to have something to do with my hands, and the low hum of the television filling the room. That 1 hour was mine. It was the only hour of the day that truly belonged to me. Then the front door opened. I heard it before I saw him. The particular way Ryan closed a door, not quite a slam, but close. The kind of close that says, "I want you to know I'm here and I'm in a mood." That sound had become familiar to me over 4 years of him living under my roof. 4 years of expensive suits draped over my dining room chairs. 4 years of phone calls in the kitchen that he would lower his voice for when I walked in. 4 years of my daughter Emily smiling at me with that careful, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ryan Cole walked into my living room like he owned it. He didn't say hello. He didn't glance at me the way you glance at another person when you enter a shared space. That small human acknowledgement that says, "You exist, and I see you." He just walked straight to the television, reached past me, like I was a lamp, like I was a piece of furniture, and turned it off. "Go to your room, old woman," he said. Just like that, flat, certain, like it was the most natural sentence in the world. This living room is mine now. I sat very still for a moment, not because I was shocked, and that itself told me something, that I wasn't even shocked, just tired in a way that goes deeper than bones, but because I wanted to be sure I had heard him correctly. I wanted to give him the benefit of a doubt I wasn't sure he deserved. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was quiet. I made it quiet on purpose. He didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. He had already walked to the far end of the room and was pulling out his phone, scrolling, done with the conversation before it had started. I looked at Emily. She was standing in the doorway between the hall and the living room. She had her purse still on her shoulder, like she had just come in behind him. She was looking at a spot somewhere slightly to the left of my face. Not at me, not at him. That careful, practiced look she had been perfecting for 4 years. "Emily," I said. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Mom, he's had a long day." That was it. That was all she said. And I want to tell you, I have lived 69 years. I have heard hard words. I sat beside my husband's hospital bed for 6 weeks and heard things that would break most people in half. But right then, in that moment, my daughter's silence, her choosing his long day over my dignity, that hurt in a place I didn't know I still had. I didn't argue. I have never been a woman who argues when arguing won't accomplish anything. I learned that at the county recorder's office, where I spent my entire career surrounded by documents and facts and the cold, clear truth that paper outlasts feelings every single time. I stood up from my green armchair, slowly, because I have a bad knee and I refuse to rush for anyone, and I walked down the hall to my bedroom and I closed the door behind me. I could hear Ryan laughing at something on his phone before I even reached the end of the hall. I went to my dresser. Not the top drawer where I keep my jewelry. Not the middle drawer. The bottom drawer, the one I never open in front of company. I pulled it open and I took out a manila folder. Inside that folder were 3 documents I had placed there 15 years ago, right after my husband Harold passed away. And I had updated them twice since then, because I am a woman who believes in keeping things current. The first document was my will. The second was a financial power of attorney, assigned to my attorney Daniel Sterling, not to my daughter. The third was the deed to this house, 1147 Riverton Lane, Charleston, South Carolina. Owner of record, Margaret Ann Whitmore. No co-signers, no shared title. Mine. I sat on the edge of my bed and I held that folder in my lap for a long moment. I could still hear the television in the living room. Ryan had turned it back on, something loud, a game of some kind. And I could hear Emily's voice saying something I couldn't make out, and his voice cutting across hers, and then her voice going quiet. I thought about the night Harold died. I thought about how I had come home to this house alone for the first time and sat in that same green armchair and thought, this is mine now. This is what I have left. I will keep it. I had kept it. I had paid the taxes and the insurance and the maintenance every year, every single year without missing once. I had let Emily and Ryan move in 4 years ago because Emily called me crying from a parking lot at 11 o'clock at night, saying they had lost their apartment and had nowhere to go, and because I am her mother, and I said yes, the way mothers say yes, without conditions, without contracts, without thinking about what 4 years of yes can cost you. I thought about all of that sitting on my bed with my folder. And then I did something Ryan Cole had never expected and never, I think, even imagined. I took my purse off the hook behind my door. I put my wallet inside it. I put the folder inside it. I took my car keys from the hook beside the purse. I walked back down the hall. I walked through the living room. Ryan was on the couch with his feet on my coffee table, the table Harold and I had bought at an estate sale in 1987. He didn't look up. I opened the front door. I walked through it. I closed it quietly behind me, the way you close a door when you're done with a room. I heard him laugh. He thought I was going to walk around the block and come back and go to bed and be quiet. I know that's what he thought, because that is what he expected from me. That is what he had always gotten from me. I got in my car and I drove to the Hampton Inn on Market Street downtown, and I paid for one night with my own credit card, and I went upstairs to room 214, and I sat in the chair by the window, and I did not cry. I thought. I am good at thinking. 35 years in a government office will do that for you. You learn to separate what you feel from what the situation actually is. You learn that the story you tell yourself in the moment is almost never the story that matters. What matters is the document. What matters is what is true on paper. What was true on paper was this. Emily and Ryan Cole had lived in my home for 4 years. They had paid no rent. Not a dollar. I had covered the mortgage, long paid off, but there were taxes and insurance and utilities. I had covered the electricity, the water, the internet, the cable. I had bought groceries more weeks than not. I had absorbed the financial weight of 2 adults who were, by every reasonable standard, capable of supporting themselves. And in exchange, I had been told to go to my room. I opened my folder on the hotel desk and I looked at my deed. And I thought about what Daniel Sterling had told me years ago when Harold first got sick and we were making arrangements. He had looked me in the eye and said, "Margaret, the most important thing you can do is know exactly what you own and exactly what your rights are, because the moment you need that information is never the moment you have time to find it." I had found it. I had kept it current. I had it in my hands. I picked up my phone and I sent Daniel a text message. It was almost 9 o'clock at night, but Daniel had been my attorney and my friend for 22 years, and when I needed him, he had always answered. "I need to meet with you first thing tomorrow morning," I wrote. "It's time." His reply came in under 2 minutes. 8 a.m., I'll have coffee ready. I set my phone down and I looked out the window at the Charleston skyline and I felt, not angry exactly, Not sad. Something cleaner than either of those things. Something close to clarity. I had let this go on for 4 years. I had told myself that Emily needed time, that Ryan was difficult but harmless, that keeping the peace was worth the cost. I had minimized and explained and forgiven and absorbed. But there is a difference between forgiveness and permission, between patience and surrender, between loving your child and disappearing for them. Ryan had walked into my living room and told me to go to my room. And somewhere inside the part of me that had spent 35 years handling legal documents in a county recorder's office, something had simply and quietly shifted into place, like a key turning in a lock that had been waiting, without complaint, for a very long time. I slept better that night than I had slept in 4 years. At 7:30 the next morning, I was dressed, coffee in hand, folder under my arm. I drove to Daniel's office on King Street. He was waiting at the door when I pulled into the parking lot, which is how I knew he understood the weight of what I had texted him. "Tell me everything," he said, before I had even sat down. So I did. I told him about the 4 years. I told him about the groceries and the utilities and the rent that never came. I told him about the way Ryan spoke to Emily, in this particular tone that she had started to mirror back, that flattening of her voice, that careful, careful silence. And I told him about last night, about the television, about "go to your room, old woman," about my daughter choosing his bad day over my dignity. Daniel listened the way good lawyers listen, without interrupting, without nodding too much, without the kind of performed sympathy that means nothing. He listened like he was filing everything I said into the appropriate drawer. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and he looked at me for a moment. "Margaret," he said, "you have never once added either of their names to this property." "No," I said. "They have no lease, no written agreement of any kind." "No. And you have the deed, current and clear, in your name." I placed it on the desk in front of him. He looked at it. He looked at me. "Then they are tenants at will," he said, "which means you have the legal right to terminate that arrangement. In South Carolina, without a lease, the standard notice period is 30 days. 30 days, I said. 30 days, he confirmed. And then he smiled. Not a mean smile, but the smile of a man who has spent his career watching people be surprised by what the law actually says. "You want me to draw up the eviction notice?" "I want 2 things," I said. "I want the notice drawn up, and I want it hand-delivered." "I have a young associate," he said, "Michael Cruz, sharp kid. He can be there by 9:30. "Good." He started typing. I sat in that chair in Daniel's office, and I drank my coffee, and I listened to the keys of his keyboard, and I thought about Ryan waking up this morning in my house, probably making coffee in my kitchen, probably sitting on my couch with his feet on Harold's coffee table, thinking that last night was settled, thinking that the old woman had gone around the block and come home and gone to bed and understood her place. That thought, right there, thinking that the old woman had understood her place, that was the one that finally made me feel something sharp and bright and clear. Because I did understand my place. My place was on this deed. My place was in this chair, across from a lawyer who was about to hand me papers that would change everything. My place was in the living room of a house that Harold and I had bought in 1988, that I had kept through a recession and a flood and a husband's death and a daughter's silence, that had my name and only my name on every piece of paper that had ever mattered. At 9:15, Daniel slid the envelope across the desk to me. Eviction notice, 30 days from today's date, fully legal, fully documented. I looked at the envelope for a moment. "And Michael will deliver this personally? He'll ring the bell at 9:30. I thought about Ryan opening the door, still half asleep probably, in one of his expensive dress shirts he always wore even on weekends, like the shirt itself was supposed to tell you something about him. Opening the door expecting a delivery, a neighbor, anything except this. "One more thing," I said. I reached into my folder and placed a second document on the desk. I'd like to make some calls this morning before Michael gets there. All of the utilities on that property run through my accounts. Every single one. Daniel looked at the list I had written out the night before in my hotel room. Cable, internet, water billing, electricity, the streaming services. All of it. My name, my cards, my accounts. He looked up at me. You're going to turn them off. I'm going to let them know, I said carefully, that those accounts will be transitioning. He set the paper down. Margaret, he said slowly, with something that wasn't quite a smile, I have been your attorney for 22 years. I don't think I have ever seen you like this. Like what? I asked. Ready, he said. I folded my hands in my lap. I looked out his window at the street where Charleston was already moving, already living its Tuesday morning. I have always been ready, I said. I just stopped waiting for someone to ask. At 9:20, I made my calls, methodical, calm, one by one, the way I had always done things. Each call took under 4 minutes. Each account representative was polite and asked no questions that I wasn't prepared to answer, because these were my accounts, in my name, with my billing information, and I had every right to do exactly what I was doing. By 9:28, everything connected to 1147 Riverton Lane had been set to transition by end of business that day. At 9:30 exactly, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael Cruz. At the door, envelope in hand. I put my phone face down on the desk and I looked at Daniel. He was already looking at me. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to say. Whatever happened next, whatever Ryan shouted, whatever Emily felt, whatever they decided to do in the 30 days they had been given, none of that changed the document. None of that changed whose name was on the deed. I picked up my coffee cup, found it empty, and set it back down. I think, I said quietly, I'd like another cup. Daniel stood up to get the pot, and somewhere across Charleston, a doorbell rang. Michael Cruz was 26 years old and barely looked it. I know because Daniel had shown me his firm photo on the wall before I left, the kind of headshot where young lawyers try to look serious and end up just looking like they haven't slept. But Daniel had told me he was sharp, and Daniel Sterling did not use that word loosely. I was still sitting in Daniel's office when my phone buzzed a second time. Envelope accepted. He didn't say a word, just stared at it. I read the message twice. Ryan Cole, the man who had told me to go to my room without blinking, the man who laughed when I walked out my own front door, had said nothing. I don't know what I expected. Shouting, maybe, a door slam, something. The silence almost surprised me more. Well, Daniel asked. He took it, I said. Daniel nodded like that was exactly what he expected. They always take it. It's the 5 minutes after that's the interesting part. He was right. It took exactly 4 minutes. My phone rang, Emily's name on the screen. I looked at it for one full ring. 2. Daniel watched me without saying anything. On the third ring, I answered. Mom? Her voice was tight. Not crying, not yet, but close, the way a string sounds right before it snaps. What is this? What did you do? Good morning, Emily, I said. Mom, don't do that. Don't be calm right now. Ryan is standing here holding a legal notice and he is not handling this well. That's between him and his emotions, I said. You can't evict us. We live here. You live there, I said, because for 4 years, I chose to allow it. That choice changed last night when your husband told me to go to my room. A pause. I could hear Ryan in the background, his voice low and sharp, saying something I couldn't make out but didn't need to. I had heard that tone before. I had watched Emily arrange herself around that tone for 4 years, bending slightly, making herself smaller, choosing careful. He was tired, she said. He didn't mean it like that. He meant exactly what he said. He said the living room was his. Emily, what part of that sentence was ambiguous to you? She didn't answer. The notice is legal, I said. 30 days. Daniel Sterling's office handled it. If you have questions about the process, you're welcome to contact him directly. You hired a lawyer against your own family." The word family landed in a particular way. I had been waiting for it, actually. The moment when this became about loyalty rather than fact, when the legal document would be reframed as a betrayal rather than a response to one. "I hired a lawyer on behalf of my own property," I said. "Those are two different things." Ryan's voice in the background got louder. I heard Emily say, "Stop, just stop." Not to me, to him. Then her voice came back, lower now, like she'd moved into another room. "Mom, where are you even staying?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." "I know it isn't." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her breathing. "Can we talk?" she said. "Just you and me, without lawyers?" "We're talking right now," I said. "You know what I mean, in person." I considered it, not long, but genuinely. Because here is what nobody tells you about being a mother. Even when your child has hurt you, even when she has stood in a doorway and let her silence be a weapon, even then, the part of you that loves her doesn't switch off. It just gets very quiet. It waits. It keeps its own counsel. "Not today," I said. "Give yourself a day, Emily. Let things settle." I hung up before she could respond. Daniel looked at me. "How is she?" "Scared," I said, which is different from sorry, but it might be the beginning of it. I gathered my folder, straightened my jacket, and stood up. Daniel walked me to the door. On the step outside, he put a hand briefly on my shoulder. Not pitying, not dramatic, just steady. "Margaret," he said, "you sure about all of this?" "I have never been more sure of anything since I signed that deed," I told him. I drove back to the hotel. I ordered room service, eggs and toast, nothing elaborate. And I sat by the window and I let myself feel the thing I had been holding at arm's length since the night before. Not anger, something more complicated than anger. Grief, maybe. The specific grief of understanding that a relationship you thought was one thing has actually been another thing for a long time, and you are only now letting yourself see it clearly. Emily was my daughter. I loved her completely and without condition. But loving her had, somewhere along the way, become a habit of shrinking, of making myself small so that she and Ryan could be comfortable, of absorbing and absorbing and absorbing until there was almost nothing left of me in my own house except the deed in the bottom drawer. I ate my eggs, I drank my coffee, I opened my folder and began making a list, not because I needed to, but because lists had always been how I organized my thinking. What needed to happen in the next 30 days? What repairs the house might need once they left? Who I should call about the guest bedroom that had been Ryan's home office for 2 years, and which I strongly suspected was going to need new carpet. I was halfway through the list when my phone rang again. Not Emily this time, Ryan. I stared at his name on the screen. In 4 years, Ryan Cole had called me exactly 3 times. Once when Emily was sick and he needed me to pick her up from work. Once to ask what my Wi-Fi password was, and once, 6 months ago, to tell me, not ask, tell, that they were thinking about adopting a dog, and he wanted me to know in case I had concerns about the property. I had not been consulted. I had been informed. That was how Ryan operated. And now he was calling me directly. I answered on the 4th ring. "Ryan, you want to tell me what you think you're doing?" His voice was controlled. I could hear the control in it, the deliberate lowering of something that wanted to be much louder. A man used to being in charge, sitting in a situation that was entirely out of his control and hating every second of it. "I believe the document explains it clearly," I said. "That document is harassment. That's what it is. You cannot just... We have rights, Margaret, tenant rights. You can't throw people out on the street." 30 days isn't the street, I said. 30 days is 30 days. "We have nowhere to go." "Ryan," I said, and I kept my voice even and clear, the way I had kept it in conference rooms and county hearings for 35 years when someone across the table was trying to make their problem into my problem. You are a grown man with an income and a professional network. Finding housing in 30 days is well within your capability." "My income," he laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind of sound people make when they're trying to dismiss something that actually hit. Right. Something in that laugh snagged at me, just slightly, just enough. Something about the way he said, "my income," like the words tasted strange. "Is there something about your income you want to tell me?" I asked. Silence. Not the silence of someone gathering their thoughts. The silence of someone who realized they had just said more than they meant to. "I'm calling my own lawyer," he said, and hung up. I set the phone down on the desk, and I sat with that silence for a moment. My income. The way he'd said it. The laugh that followed. I picked up my phone again and called Daniel. "Question," I said when he answered. "When Emily and Ryan came to me 4 years ago, you remember they said they'd lost their apartment. Do you remember what reason they gave me?" "Job transition," Daniel said immediately. "Ryan said he was between positions. You were helping them get back on their feet." "Right. And 2 months after they moved in, he had that job at Meridian Capital." "The investment firm, yes." "Daniel," I said slowly, "in 4 years, living rent-free in my house, with me paying utilities and half their groceries, what did he do with his salary?" A pause on the other end. Not a long one, but meaningful. "That," Daniel said carefully, "is a very good question. Could you look into it?" "Margaret, that's not strictly within the scope of an eviction proceeding." "I know," I said, "but you have a way of knowing things. You always have. And something about the way he just spoke to me on the phone has my county recorder instincts telling me there is a document somewhere that I should see." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Let me make a couple of calls," he said finally, discreetly. "I appreciate that." That afternoon, the calls I had made to the utility companies took effect. I know the exact moment it happened because Emily called me again at 4:58, and this time her voice was different. "Mom, the internet just cut out." "Yes." "And the cable." "Yes." Did you actually cancel the services?" "I transitioned the accounts," I said. "They're in my name, Emily. They were always in my name." "Mom, I have work. I work from home. You know that. I need the internet." "I know," I said. "And when you have an address where you have an account in your own name, the internet will work fine." She was quiet for a long moment. I heard Ryan somewhere behind her. Not words, just the sound of his voice, low and sharp, a constant pressuring frequency. "He's been on the phone all afternoon," Emily said, quieter now, like she'd moved away from him. "Calling people, lawyers maybe, I don't know." "Okay," I said. "Mom," her voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper. "He emptied our savings account 2 weeks ago. I found out this morning when my card got declined. I thought it was a bank error." It wasn't a bank error, was it? The question sat between us. She already knew the answer. She was asking me because she wasn't ready to say it out loud to herself yet. That is a thing daughters do sometimes. They say the hard truth to their mothers first, as practice. "I don't know the details," I said honestly, "but Emily, when was the last time you saw your joint account balance?" She exhaled slowly. "I trusted him to manage it. He always said he had it handled." Handled. I thought about that word. I thought about Ryan's laugh on the phone. My income. "Emily," I said carefully, "I want you to log into your accounts tonight. Every account. All of them. Look at where the money has gone." "Mom, you're scaring me." "Good," I said quietly. And then, softer, "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because you deserve to know what is real." She didn't respond, but she didn't hang up either. She stayed on the line for a long moment, breathing, thinking. "Where are you staying?" she asked again. "I'm fine, sweetheart." That's still not what I asked. For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt something crack slightly in my chest. Not enough to show, but enough. "Hampton Inn on Market Street," I said. "Room 214. "Okay," she said. "Okay." She hung up. I sat back in my chair. Outside, the city was shifting into evening, and I watched it without really seeing it, thinking instead about the way Emily's voice had sounded. Not like my daughter defending her husband, but like a woman beginning, slowly and painfully, to look at something she had been keeping just out of her field of vision for a very long time. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "Call me when you can. Found something. You were right." I read it twice, then I dialed. "Talk to me," I said. "Margaret," Daniel said, "how much do you know about online trading accounts?" "Enough," I said. "Harold had one. Why?" "Ryan has 3. 2 of them are in his name. One," Daniel paused, and in the pause I heard something I had not heard in 22 years of knowing this man. Genuine discomfort. "One of them appears to have been funded with transfers that originated from a joint account he shares with Emily." I said nothing. "Margaret, we're talking about close to $100,000 over approximately 14 months. The number landed in the room like something thrown. $100,000. My daughter's money, her savings, her future, being moved account to account by a man who had told me to go to my room and laughed when I closed the gate behind me. "How much is left?" I said. "That's the thing," Daniel said. "The accounts are empty, all 3 of them. Whatever he put in, it's gone. Bad positions from what I can tell. He was trading on leverage, the kind of trading that either makes you very rich very fast or loses everything." He lost everything. Everything he put in, yes. I set my phone flat on the desk for a moment, pressed my palm against it, took one breath, and then I picked it up again. "Daniel," I said, "make sure those eviction papers are airtight and keep the documents on the trading accounts somewhere safe, because I think we're going to need them." "Already done," he said. "Margaret, how are you holding up?" I thought about Emily's voice. I trusted him to manage it. I thought about $100,000. I thought about my green armchair and the television and a man who had laughed as I walked out my own front door. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said. I didn't sleep well that second night, not because I was afraid, I want to be clear about that, but because the number kept moving through my mind, the way numbers do when you've spent your career working with them. $100,000, 14 months, 3 accounts, all empty. I kept thinking about Emily's voice on the phone. I trusted him to manage it. 7 words that contained 4 years of a marriage, 4 years of a woman slowly handing over the parts of herself she should have kept hold of, piece by piece, until the morning her card got declined at a grocery store and she found out she had nothing left to hand. I got up at 6 and made coffee with the small machine on the hotel desk and sat in my chair. And I thought about what Daniel had told me and what it meant for the next 28 days. Because here is what I knew. Ryan Cole was not a man who accepted things quietly. He accepted them loudly, at high volume, with lawyers and ultimatums and the particular confidence of someone who has never genuinely been held accountable for anything in his adult life. The eviction notice had stunned him. The utilities had stunned him. But stunned men recover. And when they recover, they push back. I was ready for the push. It came at 8:47 in the morning, not from Ryan, from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Whitmore?" A man's voice, professional, measured. "My name is Jeffrey Hale. I'm calling on behalf of my client, Ryan Cole. I understand there's been some confusion regarding the property at Riverton Lane." Confusion. I held that word for just a moment. "There's no confusion on my end," I said pleasantly. The notice was quite clear. "My client believes there may be grounds for a claim of implied tenancy," Jeffrey said. "Given the length of residence and the nature of the familial relationship, a court could reasonably interpret—" "Mr. Hale," I said, "how long have you been practicing property law?" A brief pause. 14 years. "Then you know that implied tenancy in South Carolina requires either a lease agreement or consistent rent payments. There is no lease. There have been no rent payments, not $1 in 4 years. You also know that the property deed is unambiguous and has been in my name since 1988. I let that land. So I would encourage you to look very carefully at the actual facts before you advise your client to pursue a claim that will cost him money he does not appear to have. Another pause, longer this time. I see you've spoken with counsel, he said. I've been counsel adjacent for 35 years, I said. Daniel Sterling is my attorney. I believe you know him. The silence that followed told me everything. Everybody in Charleston property law knew Daniel Sterling. I'll be in touch, Jeffrey said, and the call ended. I set my phone down and finished my coffee. 20 minutes later, Daniel called me. Jeffrey Hale just called me, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice without seeing his face. I know, I said. I spoke with him first. Margaret, he paused. What exactly did you say to him? The truth, I said, clearly. Daniel laughed, a real one, the kind that comes from genuine surprise. He told me his client wants to discuss a settlement. He used the word amicable. What kind of settlement? Extended timeline, 90 days instead of 30, in exchange for your agreement not to pursue any financial claims related to the back rent. I thought about that for exactly 4 seconds. No, I said. I told him you'd say that. What did he say? He said he'd call back. Daniel's voice shifted, became more careful. Margaret, there's something else. I made some additional inquiries this morning about Ryan's situation at Meridian Capital, the firm he works for. I waited. There are rumors, Daniel said slowly, strong enough that I'd call them more than rumors. Apparently there's been an internal compliance review for the past 6 weeks, something about client fund mismanagement. I don't have details, it's not public yet, but the kind of people I called don't usually get these things wrong. I sat very still. Are you telling me that Ryan Cole is being investigated at work for financial misconduct? I said, at the same time that he has quietly emptied his wife's savings account through private trading accounts? I'm telling you there is smoke, Daniel said carefully. Enough smoke that you should know about it. Does Emily know? I don't know what Emily knows. I picked up my phone after I hung up with Daniel and I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring, which told me she had been sitting with her phone waiting for me to call. That is a thing I know about Emily. She has always answered too fast when she was worried about something. Mom, she said. I need you to listen to me, I said. Not as your mother right now. As someone who has spent 35 years working in a county office where documents are the only thing that matters. Are you listening? Yes. Have you looked at all of your accounts yet, like I asked you last night? A pause that told me everything before she said a word. I started to, and then Ryan came home and I didn't get to finish. Emily, go somewhere he is not, right now. Take your laptop or your phone, go to a coffee shop, go anywhere, and look at every account, every one. Savings, checking, any investment accounts, any accounts you may have co-signed. Look at the transaction history, all of it. Do you understand? Her voice was small. Mom, you're scaring me again. I know, I said. I'm sorry, but scared is better than blindsided. She was quiet for a moment. Then, is this about the savings account? Because I called the bank and they said the withdrawal was authorized. Authorized by whom? Authorized by... She stopped. The silence stretched out like something pulled thin. By Ryan, she finished. Emily, please go look at the accounts. She hung up. I sat in that hotel room for the next 2 hours doing something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not formally, not kneeling beside the bed. I have never been that kind of woman. But the steady, internal kind of conversation with whatever part of the universe might be listening. I prayed for my daughter. Not that she would come back to me. Not that she would choose me. But that she would choose herself. That she would look at the numbers and let them tell her what they were. My phone rang at 11:43. Emily. She was crying. Not the crying she had done at 11 o'clock at night 4 years ago in a parking lot. Not the soft, managed kind of crying that asks for comfort. This was something rawer, something that had been held in too long and had finally broken through. "Mom," she said, "it's gone. It's all gone. There's $42 in our joint account. $42. He moved everything else into an account I didn't even know existed, and I looked it up, and it's a trading platform, Mom. He was trading. He was losing." I closed my eyes for just a moment. "Okay," I said. "Okay, sweetheart." I confronted him. Her voice cracked. "He said it was an investment. He said he was trying to grow our money so we could buy a house. He said he was doing it for us." "What did you say?" I said we had enough money to buy a house 2 years ago. I had the down payment. He told me to wait. He said the market wasn't right." She was crying harder now. "Mom, he told me to wait, and he took the money and lost it. And the whole time we were living in your house for free, and I didn't even—" "Emily, stop. Breathe." She breathed. "Listen to me," I said. "None of what he did is your fault. Do you hear me? You trusted your husband. That is not a character flaw. That is what people do. What matters now is what you do with what you know." "What do I do?" she whispered. And there it was, that question, the one I had been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it. Not tell me he'll fix it, and not tell me it'll be okay, but what do I do? My daughter asking her mother a real question, maybe for the first time in 4 years. "First," I said, "you call your bank and you separate your accounts. Today, this afternoon. You put your paycheck into an account that has only your name on it." "Okay." "Second, you call Daniel Sterling's office. I'll let him know you're calling. He can recommend a family attorney." A pause. "Mom, are you telling me to—" "I'm telling you to protect yourself," I said. "What you do beyond that is your decision, but you cannot make any decision from a position where he has access to your money." She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought maybe I had pushed too far, said too much, moved faster than she was ready to move. Then she said, "He's at work right now." "I know." "I could go to the bank right now." "Yes, you could." "Mom." Her voice steadied. Not completely, but enough. "Did you know, before all of this, did you know about the money?" It was a fair question, and it deserved a fair answer. "I suspected something was wrong," I said. "The way he spoke to me Tuesday night, that wasn't a man who felt secure. That was a man performing control because he had lost it somewhere else. But I didn't know the details until yesterday. Why didn't you say something to me before it got this bad?" And there it was, the question underneath the question, the one that was really asking, "Why did you let this happen? Why didn't you protect me?" I took a breath. "Because every time I tried to ask questions," I said carefully, "you told me Ryan had it handled. Because I was afraid if I pushed, you would pull away. And because I made a mistake, Emily, I kept the peace when I should have asked harder questions. That's on me. I'm sorry for it." She cried again, briefly, then stopped herself. I could hear her pulling it back together, could almost feel the effort of it through the phone. "I'm going to the bank," she said. "Good. And Mom?" Her voice dropped. "I'm sorry for Tuesday night, for not saying anything when I should have said something." I pressed my hand flat against my chest for a moment, over my sternum, where that thing had cracked slightly 2 nights ago. "Go to the bank," I said softly. "We'll talk about the rest later." She went. At 2 in the afternoon, Daniel called me again. His voice had a different quality, the careful, deliberate quality of someone carrying something they need to set down gently. "It went public an hour ago," he said. "Meridian Capital, a formal SEC inquiry, client fund irregularities. Ryan Cole is named as one of 3 individuals under review." I put my hand on the desk to steady myself, not because I was surprised. I had felt it coming since that laugh on the phone, since my income with that hollow sound underneath it, but because knowing something and hearing it confirmed out loud are 2 entirely different experiences. "Is he going to be arrested?" I asked. "It's civil, not criminal at this stage. But Margaret, The man has no savings, no functioning investment accounts, a civil inquiry at his employer, and an eviction notice with 27 days left on it. And a wife who is at the bank right now separating their accounts, I added. A pause. Emily went to the bank? She called me at 11:43, I said. Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentler than it had been all week. How is she? She's doing the hard thing, I said, which is all you can ever ask of anybody. That evening, Emily called me one more time. She was not crying. Her voice was flat in the way voices get when someone has cried everything they had and moved past the other side of it into something that isn't quite calm, but is at least steady. He came home while I was still at the bank, she said. I had already transferred my direct deposit. He called me 11 times. Did you answer? On the 11th one. A pause. I've never heard him sound like that. Not angry, scared. He kept saying it was all a misunderstanding, that the SEC thing was a formality, that the money was going to come back. He said we could start over. He said he just needed me to talk to you and get us more time in the house. What did you say? Emily took a breath. I said I needed to think. Her voice steadied further. And then I hung up. And I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for 45 minutes. And I thought. And, I said. I remembered something, she said slowly. Last year, April. I found a piece of paper in his jacket pocket when I was taking it to the dry cleaner. It was a statement from one of those trading accounts. There was a loss listed, a big one. And when I asked him about it, he told me it was an old account. It was closed. It was nothing. She paused. I believed him. Emily, I chose to believe him, she said, and there was something hard and clear in her voice now. Nobody made me. I saw the paper, and I had a choice, and I chose the easier answer. She exhaled. I'm not going to do that anymore. I didn't say anything. I let that sit exactly where she had placed it. Mom, she said quietly, where do I even start? I thought about that for a moment, about starting over. About what it looked like from the inside when everything you built turns out to have been built on what someone else told you was solid ground. You start, I said, by knowing exactly what is real. What is in your account, in your name, that belongs to you alone. You start there. She was quiet. I have $4,100, she said. That's what was in my paycheck account. He couldn't touch that one. A pause. It's not nothing. No, I said. It's not nothing. It's a beginning. $4,100. I stayed with that number long after Emily and I had said goodnight. It wasn't much, but it was real. It had her name on it and nobody else's. And in the world my daughter was now walking into, real and hers were the only two things that were going to matter. I woke up on day 4 feeling something I hadn't expected. Not relief, not satisfaction. Something more like the particular stillness that comes after a long storm, when the air hasn't cleared yet, but the worst of it has passed, and you can finally hear your own thoughts again. I made my hotel coffee. I sat in my chair. I looked at my folder on the desk. 26 days left on the notice. I wasn't naive enough to think 26 days would be simple. Ryan Cole was a cornered man, and cornered men, in my experience, don't go quietly. They escalate. They try angles. They make noise and phone calls, and they look for any pressure point that might crack something open in their favor. I had spent enough time around difficult people in 35 years of county work to know the pattern. And I was right. At 9:15 that morning, my doorbell at Riverton Lane rang. I know this because Emily called me to tell me. There are 2 men outside, she said. Her voice was careful, controlled. She had shifted since yesterday. Something in her had gone quieter in the way that isn't weakness, but the opposite of it. They have a clipboard. Ryan let them in through the gate before I could say anything. Who are they? One of them gave me a card. He says he's a property assessor, independent. Ryan says he wants a formal valuation done on the house. I set my coffee cup down. A valuation. He says he wants to know what the house is worth. He says, she lowered her voice, He says if you're going to play hardball, he has options. He said that to me, Mom. He has options. I understood immediately. Ryan was exploring whether he could make a claim against the property's value based on years of residence, some kind of unjust enrichment angle, however thin. It wouldn't work. Daniel had already told me it wouldn't work. But Ryan didn't know what I knew, and what he was counting on was that the word options would frighten me into negotiating. It didn't. Emily, I said, you have the right to refuse entry to anyone in that house. Anyone. Do you understand me? A brief pause. Even if Ryan already let them in? He is not the homeowner. He cannot authorize access to my property. You may ask them to leave. Silence on the line. I could hear Ryan's voice in the background, that low, pressuring frequency, saying something to Emily I couldn't make out. He's right here, she said quietly. He's looking at me. Emily, look at him and tell those men they are not authorized to be on this property and they need to leave. A long beat, long enough that I held my breath slightly without meaning to. Then I heard Emily's voice, clear and steady, completely different from the careful, managed tone she'd been using for 4 years. I'm going to need you both to leave. This property belongs to Margaret Whitmore, and she has not authorized this visit. Please go. Ryan's voice spiked immediately. I heard it through the phone, not words, volume. Emily didn't flinch. I could tell by the steadiness in her next sentence. Ryan, stop. I said they need to leave. The line was quiet for a moment. Then she came back to me. They're going, she said. I exhaled. Good girl, I said, and then immediately, I mean that. Not because you did what I asked, because you did what was right. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Not happy exactly, but real. It felt strange, she said, standing up like that. It always does at first, I said, and then it starts to feel like the only thing that makes sense. Ryan called me 17 minutes later. I answered. You think you've won something, he said. He wasn't trying to control his voice anymore. The professional, measured tone from the first call was completely gone. What was underneath it wasn't just anger. It was panic wearing anger's clothes. You think you're so smart with your lawyer and your 30-day notice, you're destroying your own family. Ryan, I said, I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped holding things together that you had already broken. I will take you to court. I will tie this property up in litigation for 2 years. You want to go that route? Because I will make this the most expensive eviction in Charleston history. I had been expecting that threat since day one. You are welcome to try, I said. Daniel Sterling has 48 hours of documentation and a clean deed. What do you have? I have 4 years of residency and a familial claim and a judge who might feel differently than your lawyer does. You have 26 days, I said, and a SEC inquiry that will be significantly more complicated for you if you spend those days filing frivolous motions instead of making arrangements. I let that land. I know about Meridian Capital, Ryan. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, lower, stripped of performance. Who told you about that? Documents mean everything, I said. I learned that a long time ago. I paused. Ryan, I am not your enemy, but I am not your solution either. You made choices, and those choices have consequences. 26 days is enough time to handle this like an adult, if you choose to. He hung up. Daniel called me an hour later. Jeffrey Hale withdrew, he said simply. Ryan's lawyer dropped the case. Already? Apparently, once Jeffrey looked at the actual paperwork and then looked up the Meridian situation, he decided the billable hours weren't worth the liability. Daniel's voice was dry. Smart man. 25 days, I said. 25 days, Daniel confirmed. Margaret, I think the worst of the fighting is done. He knows he doesn't have a case. The question now is what he does with the time he has. That question answered itself 3 days later. Emily called me at 7 in the morning, which she had started doing regularly. Not long calls, just checking in, the way we used to talk before Ryan became the thing that stood between us. That quiet, daily rhythm we were rebuilding, call by call. But this call was different. He's packing, she said. He started last night. He didn't tell me, I came downstairs and there were boxes in the living room. Is he talking to you? Barely. He said he's going to stay with his brother in Colombia. A pause. He asked me to come with him. I waited. I said no, Emily said. 2 words, flat and final. I had spent 35 years processing documents, and in all that time, I had never heard 2 words carry as much weight as those did. How do you feel? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. Like I should feel worse than I do, she said. Is that terrible? He's my husband, and he's packing boxes, and I feel relieved. I feel like I can breathe. What kind of person does that make me? An honest one, I said. That afternoon, I met Daniel in his office for what he called a progress review, which was his way of sitting across from me and making sure I was actually all right, rather than just performing all right, because in 22 years, he had learned the difference. He had a new document on the desk when I came in. He slid it toward me without saying anything first, which told me it was significant. I looked at it. It was a formal notice from Meridian Capital's legal department. Ryan Cole had been placed on indefinite administrative leave pending the completion of the SEC inquiry. His access to client accounts had been suspended. His corporate credentials had been revoked. When did this happen? I said. Issued this morning, Daniel said. Became public record an hour ago. I read the document twice, carefully, the way I had read every document in this folder. The inquiry is specifically about client fund mismanagement. 3 clients, Daniel said, significant amounts. The investigators believe the pattern of behavior started approximately 18 months ago. He paused, roughly the same time the transfers from Emily's savings account began. I put the document flat on the desk and I pressed both palms against it, not in anger, in something steadier than anger, in the recognition of a complete picture finally coming into focus. Ryan Cole had not simply been arrogant and careless. He had been systematically dismantling every financial resource around him: client funds, Emily's savings, my patients, my house, and using each one to try to cover what he had lost in the previous one. And when each one ran out, he moved to the next. I had been the last stop on that train. Daniel, I said, does Emily have any exposure here? Any joint liability? He shook his head. The accounts were solely in his name. She was a victim, not a participant. I have already spoken with a colleague who does financial fraud work, just informally, just to check, and she is clean. I exhaled. She needs her own attorney, I said, for the divorce. Daniel looked at me. She's filing? She will, I said. She's not there yet, but she's close. She just needs to know it's survivable. I paused. Is it survivable? Financially? With $4,100 and a remote job and no savings? With the right attorney and a settlement that captures her share of whatever assets Ryan has left, Daniel tilted his head. It'll be tight, but yes, survivable. Good, I closed my folder. I want to know what that looks like, the numbers, the timeline. Not because I'm going to manage her life. I'm done managing things for people who don't ask me to. But because when she asks me, I want to be able to give her real information instead of comfort that doesn't hold up. Daniel smiled. I'll put together an outline. On day 19, Ryan Cole carried the last of his boxes to his car. I know this because Emily called me as it was happening, not to narrate it dramatically, but because she needed someone on the line while it happened, some steady voice in her ear, while her husband of 6 years loaded a rented hatchback with the physical remnants of a marriage. I didn't say much. I just stayed on the line. I heard the front door close. I heard a car door, an engine. Then, quiet. He's gone, Emily said. Are you okay? A long pause, the kind that is doing real work inside a person. I think so, she said. I think I will be. Another pause. The house feels different without him in it. It always does, I said. Give it a few days. Mom, her voice shifted. I found something while he was packing. He left it. I don't think he meant to. It was in the kitchen drawer under some papers, an envelope with your name on it. I sat up straighter. My name? Your full name and the address. It's sealed. It looks old. The envelope is kind of yellow. She hesitated. Should I open it? No, I said. Hold on to it. I'll come get it. I had not been back to the house since the night I walked out. I want to say I chose that on purpose, as some kind of principled stance, but the honest truth is that I wasn't ready. That house was 37 years of my life, Harold's life, our life together. And for the past 4 years, it had become something that was slowly being pressed into a shape I didn't recognize. I wasn't sure what I was going to feel when I walked through the front door again. I went the next morning. Emily opened the door before I had reached the porch, which meant she had been watching for my car, and for a moment we both just stood there. She looked tired. She looked lighter than I had seen her in years, both things at once, which is how people look when they have been through something real. She held out the envelope, my name, in handwriting I recognized immediately, Harold's handwriting. I stood on the porch and looked at it for a long moment without touching it. The paper was yellowed the way paper yellows when it's been sitting in a drawer for a long time. Years. The seal was still intact. Did you know about this? I said to Emily. No, she said. I have no idea how it got in that drawer. I've never seen it before. I took the envelope carefully, the way you take something you know matters. I looked at the front. For Margaret, when the time is right. Harold's handwriting, unmistakably. That particular way he formed the letter M, wide and deliberate. My hands were not steady. Come inside, Emily said quietly. I looked up at my front door, the door of my house, the house I had left 9 days ago with a folder under my arm and a decision in my chest, and I stepped through it. I sat at the kitchen table. Emily sat across from me. Neither of us spoke. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in thirds, Harold's handwriting filling the page front and back. The date at the top was April 14th, 2009, 14 years ago, a year after his first diagnosis, a year before he died. I read the first line. Margaret, if you're reading this, then something happened that I was afraid might happen. And if something happened, then I know you are handling it, because you always handle it. But I want you to know something while you do. My throat closed. Emily was watching me from across the table. She didn't ask what it said. She just sat there, steady, present, in a way that reminded me of someone, in a way that reminded me of myself. I kept reading. Harold had always known how to say the thing I needed to hear before I knew I needed to hear it. That was his particular gift. Not grand gestures, not big speeches, but the precise word at the precise moment, delivered with the particular quietness of a man who understood that real things don't need to be said loudly. I read his letter at my kitchen table with my daughter sitting across from me, and I did not cry. Not immediately. I held myself together with the same steadiness I had held all week, because I have always been a woman who finishes the task in front of her before she allows herself to feel the full weight of it. Margaret, he wrote, I have been thinking about what happens after. Not to me. I have made my peace with that part. But to you, to the house, to everything we built together that I will be leaving in your hands. I need you to know that I trust those hands completely. I always have. You were always the one who kept things real. I was the one who dreamed, and you were the one who made sure the dreams had a foundation under them. That was us. That was the best thing about us. What I want to say is this: don't let anyone make you small. Not for the sake of keeping peace. Not for the sake of being needed. Not even for Emily. Especially not for Emily. Because the most important thing she will ever learn from you is how a woman stands in her own life. Teach her that, Margaret, even if it costs something. Especially if it costs something. The house is yours. It has always been yours in the way that matters, not just the deed, but the life inside it. Every decision you made in it, every meal, every open window, yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I love you. I have loved you since the first time you corrected my grammar in a county meeting and didn't even apologize for it. Be exactly who you are. Harold. I folded the letter along its original creases. I set it flat on the table. I put my hand on top of it, and I kept it there, pressing it gently, as if I could press it closer to something I couldn't name. Emily hadn't moved. She was watching me with that careful stillness she had, the one I used to mistake for detachment, and was only now understanding was something else entirely. The stillness of a woman who had learned to make herself quiet in order to survive a loud household, and who was slowly, carefully unlearning it. Was it from Dad, she asked. Yes, I said. Are you okay? I looked at my daughter across my kitchen table in my house, in the room where I had made 30 years of morning coffee and peach pies and ordinary days that had added up to a life, and I thought, this is the moment. Not the eviction notice, not the utilities, not Ryan's boxes loaded into a hatchback. This quiet kitchen with Harold's letter under my hand and my daughter asking if I was okay and meaning it. I'm going to be, I said, and then he knew. He always knew exactly what I would need and exactly when. Emily looked at the letter. What did he say? I considered it for a moment. Then I slid the letter across the table to her. She read it slowly. I watched her face, the way her eyes moved across the lines, the way something shifted underneath her expression, something cracking gently open the way ground cracks in the first warmth of spring. By the time she reached the last paragraph, her eyes were wet, but she didn't wipe them. She just kept reading. She set it down. Especially not for Emily, she said quietly. She wasn't asking me anything. She was reading it again aloud, just that one line, holding it. He loved you, I said. He just loved me enough to tell me the truth about you. She looked up. I spent 4 years being exactly who he didn't want you to let me become. Her voice was steady but raw. I was the reason you got smaller in here, wasn't I? Ryan was the reason, I said. I chose Ryan, she said. I stayed with Ryan. I stood in the doorway and said nothing when he told you to go to your room. She pressed her lips together. I have to own that, Mom. I don't want to make myself smaller about that, too, pretending I had no part in it. I looked at my daughter, 38 years old, sitting in the house she grew up in, reading a letter from her dead father that was telling her things she wasn't ready to hear when he was alive, but was ready to hear now. Okay, I said, own it, and then decide what you do next. She nodded slowly. I called the lawyer this morning, she said, before you came. Family attorney that Daniel's office recommended. We have a consultation on Thursday. Good. She told me, she said that with the SEC inquiry and the documented financial misconduct, I have strong grounds for a settlement that protects me. She paused. She used the word misconduct about my husband, and I sat there on the phone and I thought, how did I get here? How does someone get here? One small compromise at a time, I said. You don't walk into a situation like yours all at once. You get there in steps, each one small enough to feel survivable. And one day you look up and you're far from where you started, and you don't quite know the exact moment you cross the line. She was quiet for a moment. Is that what happened with you? With how things got in this house? Yes, I said honestly. I let it go too long. I kept extending grace past the point where grace was helping anyone. What changed? What made you finally... He turned off my television, I said, and told me to go to my room. I paused. Sometimes it isn't the biggest thing that breaks it. Sometimes it's the small thing that lands on top of everything else, and the whole pile shifts. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Can I stay here while I figure things out? Not permanently, I know you said tenants need contracts, and I understand that now. I understand it completely, but just for a little while, as your guest, on your terms." I looked at her, at this woman who was my daughter, Harold's daughter, who had made mistakes and was looking at them clearly now without flinching, who had gone to the bank alone and told those assessors to leave and read her father's letter without looking away from the hardest line in it. "On my terms," I said carefully, means I set the boundaries and you respect them. It means you are rebuilding your life, not hiding in mine. It means we talk to each other like two adults who love each other, and not like a mother managing a daughter or a daughter managing a mother. "Yes," she said immediately, no hesitation, no negotiation. "And it means," I said, "that when you are on your feet, and you will be on your feet, Emily, I am certain of that, you go. Not because I want you gone, but because you need to know you can stand in your own space." "I know," she said softly. "I want that. I want to know I can." We sat with that for a moment, the two of us, in the kitchen that smelled like old wood and morning light and years of ordinary life. Then I stood up. "I need to walk through the house," I said. "I need you to understand what that meant." I had not moved through those rooms in 11 days. 11 days of hotel coffee and hotel chairs and a folder on a desk that contained every legal fact about who I was and what I owned. And now I was standing in my own kitchen with Harold's letter in my hand and my daughter at the table and the whole house quiet around me. And I needed to move through it the way you move through something you've reclaimed. Not inspecting it, just being in it, feeling it be mine again. I walked through the kitchen into the hallway, into the living room. I stopped in the doorway. Ryan's presence was still there, faintly. The particular arrangement of furniture he preferred, the television angled slightly wrong, Harold's coffee table pushed 4 inches too far from the couch. Small things, the kind of things that accumulate over 4 years and become the texture of someone else's occupation. Emily had followed me and stood just behind me. "I'll move the table back," she said quietly. "I know," I said. I walked to my green armchair and I sat down in it. Just sat. The way I had been sitting that Tuesday evening when all of this started. I looked at the television, dark and silent. I looked at the window. I looked at the room that was mine, had always been mine, was mine still, and would remain mine. Something settled inside me, deep and final, like a joint clicking back into place. "Mom," Emily said from across the room, "what are you going to do? With the house, with all of it? What do you want it to look like?" I thought about that. Genuinely thought about it, the way I should have been thinking about it for years, instead of accommodating and adjusting and making room for other people's visions of what my life should look like. "I'm going to repaint this room," I said. "Peach, the color I always wanted and never did." I looked at the walls. "I'm going to move Harold's coffee table back. I'm going to get a new bookshelf for that far wall. I have 30 boxes of books in the garage because there was never room for them." I paused. "And I'm going to invite some people over." Emily tilted her head slightly. "What kind of people?" "Women," I said. "Older women. Women who are sitting in situations they don't know how to name, who have been making themselves small in their own homes and their own lives, and don't have anyone sitting across the table telling them what they own and what their rights are." I looked at her. Every week. Conversation. Real information about wills and deeds and finances and what the law actually says. She looked at me for a moment. Like a group? "Like a gathering," I said. "I've spent 35 years knowing things that women like me need to know. I spent too long keeping it in a folder in a bottom drawer." I paused. "That's done." The 30th day arrived on a Wednesday. Not with drama, not with a confrontation. Ryan Cole had already been gone for 11 days, and the house was already ours again in every way that mattered. The moving truck we had arranged, I had arranged, because I am a woman who handles logistics, came at 9 in the morning and collected the last few boxes Ryan had left behind, the ones Emily had stacked neatly in the garage and labeled with his brother's address in Columbia. Clean, documented, done. By noon, the house was fully, finally, completely clear. I stood in the living room. Emily stood beside me. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Then she said, "I found a studio apartment off King Street. It's small. It's mine." I looked at her. "When?" "Yesterday. I signed the lease this morning." She paused. "I wanted to tell you here, in this room." I nodded slowly. "Good," I said. And then, because it was true and she needed to hear it, "I'm proud of you." She laughed. A real one, the kind she used to have before Ryan, loose and genuine and surprised by itself. "Mom, you evicted me and I'm saying thank you. Does that seem right to you?" "It seems exactly right to me," I said. The painting took 2 days. I did it myself. My knees complained, and Emily helped more than she pretended she wasn't helping, appearing at intervals with water and the specific kind of quiet company that doesn't demand anything. By the second evening, the living room was warm peach, the color I had looked at in paint samples for 20 years and always talked myself out of. And it was so clearly, obviously right, that I stood in the doorway and laughed at myself for waiting. I moved Harold's coffee table back to its correct position. I brought 30 boxes of books out of the garage and spent a week sorting them onto shelves that I bought myself and assembled myself with a YouTube tutorial and a great deal of muttered commentary. I called 5 women I knew from the neighborhood, from church, from my years at the county office. Women over 60, mostly widowed or divorced, living alone in houses that technically belonged to them and practically belonged to whatever weight of obligation they had inherited. I told them I was hosting a gathering. I told them we would have tea and real conversation. I told them to bring their questions. 7 showed up that first Thursday. By the third week, there were 12. We talked about deeds and wills and what a power of attorney actually means and when to call a lawyer and what questions to ask, and how to read a financial statement and what your rights are as a property owner in South Carolina. We talked about the difference between grace and permission. We talked about the particular exhaustion of being the person who holds everything together and what happens when you stop. One woman, Patricia, 71, who had been letting her adult son and his girlfriend live in her house for 3 years while she slept in the smaller bedroom, cried through most of the first meeting. By the third meeting, she had asked them to leave. By the 5th meeting, she had repainted her bedroom. The week after that, she brought her neighbor. Daniel Sterling came for tea one Thursday, as a guest and nothing more, and sat in my living room and listened to 12 women talk. And when he left, he stopped at the door and said, "Harold would have loved this." "I know," I said. Emily came too some Thursdays. Not every week. She was building her own life in her own apartment with her own routines, and I was careful not to pull too hard, careful to let the space between us be healthy space rather than absence. But when she came, she sat in my green armchair, not the one I would choose, but she didn't know that, or maybe she did, and she listened, and occasionally she said something that made the whole room stop and nod. She filed for divorce in the 8th week. Ryan did not contest it. His legal situation at Meridian Capital had expanded from civil inquiry to formal investigation, and contesting a divorce settlement was the least of his problems. Emily received half of what was left, which wasn't much, but it was clean and clear and hers. She called me the night the paperwork was finalized. "It's done," she said. "How do you feel?" She thought about it. "Like myself," she said. "I feel like myself. I don't know if I can explain that better than that." "You don't have to," I said. There is a particular kind of freedom that comes not from gaining something, but from stopping the loss, from saying no more of this, from looking at the bottom drawer of your dresser and understanding that the document inside it represents something real and choosing to act on that reality instead of absorbing past it. I had spent 4 years absorbing. I had spent 35 years before that building the life those years were slowly dismantling. And then, on a Tuesday evening, a man turned off my television and told me to go to my room. And I went to my bedroom, and I took out my folder, and I understood that the most important moment in any situation is not when someone shows you who they are. That moment had come and gone 100 times. But when you finally decide what you are going to do with what you know. I own this house. I own this life. I own the green armchair and Harold's letter and the peach-colored walls and the shelves full of books that waited 30 years in boxes for the space they deserved. I own the Thursday gatherings and the women who fill my living room with their real questions and their late-arriving courage. I own the door, the open one for guests and the closed one for the version of myself that apologized for taking up space in her own home. Ryan Cole laughed when I closed the gate behind me. He thought the old woman had nowhere to go. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about everything, because this old woman knew exactly where she was going. She had a deed in her folder and a lawyer on the phone, and 35 years of knowing that words mean nothing and documents mean everything. She was going home, and this time, she was staying.